Nearly there. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. To the multitudes tuning in live on Zoom, and to all of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, it is wonderful to see you all. Welcome. Welcome. Oh gosh, there's that hooded character we were warning Gary about.
You need another candle.
Okay, so I apologise to everyone who signed on last week expecting to see Rabbi Nick, but instead got treated to Rabbi Feldman. But I'm back this week. So the reason, by the way, I wasn't here last week is because Shira and I were in the process of delivering 268 Hanukkah gift packs to every young family in the area.
Why did I get one then?
Well,
So I don't look my age.
anybody who qualifies for the vaccine does not. Anybody who qualifies for the vaccine does not qualify for the family Hanukkah pack. So that's why. But yeah, thank God we managed to get everything out to all the families. We were really pleased, really positive response. I'm sure some of you have seen things on Facebook, people responding to the gesture. So yeah, job well done, Nick and Shira. Job well done, if we may say so ourselves. All right, ladies and gents, a quick word about Parshat Miketz, a quick word about Hanukkah, and then we'll jump into our Mishnah. So Parshat Miketz is picking up the story from last week. Ooh, is it getting interesting? Last week, Joseph was ambushed by his brothers. He ended up being sold into slavery. He worked in the house of Potiphar in Egypt. And then at the end of it, he got thrown into prison, where he met a butler and a baker. And he interpreted their dreams. And one of them was freed and restored to service, and the other one was sentenced to death. And it is now, 2 years later, that we pick up the story once again. The head chamber cupbearer has been restored to his position at Pharaoh's side. And when Pharaoh has two dreams about the thin cows eating the fat cows and the thin corn eating the fat corn, he reminds him, oh, goodness me, there's a guy rotting away in jail who can probably interpret your dream for you. And that is none other than Joseph. So Joseph is whisked out of prison. He is quickly freshened up, given a haircut, given a change of clothes, and is presented to Pharaoh. When Pharaoh relays the dreams, Joseph interprets the dreams correctly, and is then promoted to second in command in the whole of Egypt. And that makes him basically the second most powerful person in the entire civilized world, because of the interpretation of the dreams and the plans that he sets in motion for the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. And so the 7 years of plenty passed by pretty quickly, and then we're into the second year of the 7 years of famine, when Jacob and his other sons are struggling in the land of Canaan, in the land of Canaan. And so the brothers say, okay, we're going to go down to Egypt, and we're going to try and get some, buy some produce, buy some food so we can sustain ourselves in this famine-ridden land. And they obviously don't know that Joseph is down there. They don't know what's happened to him. It's been years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And they go down. And as we all know, there's now the rest of the parasha, and into the beginning of next week's parasha, are the tricks, as it were, that Joseph plays on his brothers. Benjamin stays back because Yaakov doesn't want to run the risk of losing his other son from Rachel. The 10 brothers, though, go down to Egypt. And then we have this whole amazing episode where Yosef is concealing his identity from his brothers, and gives them plenty of food. He gives extra he gives them all of the provisions, and then he goes back, and all of the money that they had wanted to pay Yosef, he returns to them, and they think that's a little bit strange. And then they need to go back down for more, and they go down, and then go through the parsha. You'll see it's a whole crazy situation that goes on between Yosef, Joseph, and his brothers, and completely unbeknownst to them, he is testing them, checking that they can prove that they are beyond the place where they were all those years ago when they sold him into slavery. He wants to make sure that they're not that they've completely rid themselves of any of those issues that they had way back when. That's really the purpose of the tests. It's not revenge. It's actually to see if his brothers have done teshuvah or not. And then at the end of the parasha, Benjamin, who is now down in Egypt with his brothers, gets accused of stealing the goblet from Yosef. And this week's parasha will end on the famous cliffhanger where Yosef is sentencing Benjamin to stay in Egypt with him. By the by, it's amazing really, because when we see this with the power of hindsight, so we look at this story and we're like, how on earth could they possibly not have known that it was Yosef? Because, I mean, there's all kinds of clues that we're taught about, such as Yosef looking like Yaakov. So, if you're down in Egypt and you see a guy that looks like your father, and you're thinking to yourself, like, hang on a minute, that's a little bit strange. And there's other clues as well. I mean, we're taught somewhere, I don't know where, that nobody outside of the little Jewish family there, Yaakov and his sons, nobody knew how to speak Lashon HaKodesh. No one knew how to speak Hebrew. And then all of a sudden they wind up in Egypt and they're face to face with Joseph, and he's got an interpreter who's translating the Lashon HaKodesh for them. And that's none other than Joseph's son. I think is it Ephraim or Menashe? It's one of them. One of them is the interpreter. He knew how to speak Lashon HaKodesh. He knew how to speak Hebrew. How did he know? Because Yosef had taught him how to speak Hebrew. So there's like all these clues, and you're thinking like, how did the brothers not pick up on this? So it's and seating. We're taught that when he invites them to have a banquet, to have a meal with him, he seats them all in age order. So when we look at all these facts and we're like, how on earth could you possibly not know that this was Yosef? It's really quite an unusual thing. And I guess part of the answer is that when something is so completely removed from your reality, the way that you left Yosef all those years ago, and to think now that he could be the second in command in Egypt, sometimes our brains will just immediately shut out even the most obvious cues and the obvious clues and the obvious hints, because they're so far-fetched from any kind of reality. Hello, Nova. Glad to see that you managed to get it working today.
Yes. Hi.
Hi there. So the whole episode requires further study and digging deep, because there's just so much going on, and it's truly amazing. But that is the Parasha of Miketz. For all further research, check out your local Bible. A little couple of things on Hanukkah, if I may. Couple of things that I like to share, which actually shared earlier in the week. And actually, I was sharing these with Max Curtis, because Max Curtis asked me for something that he could share with his office, with his business. And I really like these three ideas, so I'll just share them very, very quickly. The ideas are like this. There's a verse in Proverbs which says, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that the candle of Hashem is compared to the soul of a person. So our spiritual souls, our spiritual essence is compared to the flame of a candle. It's compared to fire. And three lovely, beautiful reasons as to why this is a very fitting parable, a very fitting comparison. So number one, when you have a physical object, here is a pen, it is a physical object. It is subject to the laws of gravity. When I drop it, gravity pulls it back down to earth. It's only not falling back down to earth at the moment because I'm holding it. It's tethered into my hand. But when I release it, it's going to drop. And that's the same with all physical objects. Look at this, just to demonstrate that, that I'm telling the truth there. Fire is one physical object that doesn't respond in this way. It seems to bridge the physical and the spiritual worlds, because when you light a fire, the fire goes up. And even when you turn a candle upside down, the fire will still be trying to lift itself up, which goes against the laws of gravity. Gravity pulls things down, yet fire is always trying to climb up, and that's why it's a really lovely way of comparing it to a soul. Our spiritual souls are always looking to grow. They're always looking to climb. They're always looking to do better and to be better. But in the same way that a candle is tethered to this world by a wick, and that wick is what keeps the fire down, even though it's always trying to go up. And that, by the way, is in Jewish thought. That is why it's flickering. It's flickering because it's, on the one hand, it's trying to get up, but on the other hand, it's being pulled down. Just like our bodies, our souls are trying to grow and grow and grow and soar higher and higher, but our bodies keep our souls tethered in this world. So that's one reason why it's a very nice, very apt comparison. The second reason is because when you share physical objects, if I give you my pen, I am now one pen less. I now do not have a pen. When you share physical things, you have less the more that you share. If you pour from your jug into someone else's jug, you will have less water. But that's not the case with fire. When we share fire, the original flame is still able to stand strong, and the second flame is now also able to stand independently. So you don't deplete your source of fire the more that you give away. And so the comparison for our souls as well is that the more that we give, the more love we give, the more light that we give, the more that we give of ourselves, we leave ourselves still feeling full and still being able to stand and do what we need to do. We are not diminished by sharing with others and by sharing ourselves with others. So that's the second reason why fire is such a beautiful thing and compared to a soul. And the third is if you have a very dark room and you light a candle in the dark room, then that light is going to permeate every part of the room. And in a similar vein, our souls, the more that we do, the more that we give, we fill light and create light in some of the darkest places, and our influence can be felt from miles and miles and miles away, just by our small gestures, just by our small actions. So there you go, 3 lovely little messages of our Hanukkah candles, comparing them to our souls, and please God helping us realize how absolutely incredible we all are as individuals. So there we go. Any questions on the parasha or on Hanukkah before we go into Pirkei Avot?
Well, there's 1,000 questions on this parasha. 1,000 questions. You mentioned that how was it possible the brothers didn't recognize Joseph? How was it possible they sold him to his cousins? The people who bought Joseph and sold him on were his cousins. How didn't they know it was Joseph? Amazing. There's so many questions with this, with these parashas. This whole section of the Torah.
There really is.
Beautiful to have all these questions.
We'll get there. One day we'll get there, Martin. The other amazing thing, by the way, is if you have a look at the actual point at which he is sold, yeah? So they throw him into the pit, and then the verse says, they sat to eat food, they raised their eyes, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, right?
They were his cousins.
Okay, they might not have known each other that well. But so they say, come, let us sell him.
Grandfather that was the same to both of them.
But listen to this, Martin. Listen to this. Come, the brothers say, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, right? But let our hand not be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And the brothers agreed. The very next thing it says is, Midianite men, traders, passed by, they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. So who sold him, the brothers or the Midianites?
But the people who had him sold him into Egypt were his cousins, and they didn't know they had a grandfather that were brothers. You know, however much I don't know all of my second cousins, when we talked to each other, we suddenly realised that we had a mute. We were from the same family.
It's a good point.
They still sold him on.
It's a good point.
I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't have done it, but they're pretty wicked people.
Why was he sold in the first place?
Well, that's a different issue.
That was an alternative to his brothers killing him. They sat as a Beis-Din and they ruled that that Joseph is behaving in the same manner as what we call in Hebrew a rodef, someone who is pursuing their very lives and their very existence. And the halacha in Jewish law says, when you are being pursued by a killer, you are allowed to kill them first. That's the Jewish law of a rodef. If you've got a guy running after you with a knife, ready to stab you and kill you, in Jewish law, you would be allowed to kill them first. So they ruled as a Beis-Din that he has this status of a rodef, of someone who's trying to pursue them. And so their original thought was that they should kill him, and then they thought, no, he's our brother, we can't do that. Which is why they agree this second option of selling him to selling him on.
They may have sold him to the Midianites because they would have realised that if they sold them to their cousins who they saw coming, they wouldn't have bought.
It's funny because it's difficult to think in such terms, isn't it? I'd never really kind of connected it in that way, that in terms of the number of generations that have passed, they should all know each other. It's a really good point.
Their grandfathers were brothers.
Yeah, it's a really good point. By the way, one of the fascinating things about the woman who Joseph ends up marrying, he marries Osnat, the daughter of Potiphar, and I remember learning a number of years ago that actually Potiphar didn't have any children with his wife, because he well, I think either they had infertility issues, or I think he struggled in terms of his sexuality, and so they didn't have children for that reason. But either way, the daughter Osnat was an adopted daughter, and in some of our deeper sources, it points out that this woman Osnat was actually the daughter of Dinah, after she was violated by Shechem.
Yeah.
And so from what I understand, the story goes that this daughter was also kind of sent away from the family, and she was also then taken by this family, Potiphar's family down in Egypt, and she was given this piece of jewelry by Yaakov and by the family, given a piece of jewelry that kept her connected in some way to Yaakov's family. And when Yosef was being taken out by Pharaoh to find a wife, and all these women are throwing jewelry into the chariot so that he would pick a piece and that would be the woman that he marries, he sees this piece of jewelry with Hebrew letters on it. He's thinking, what is going on here? Why is there a Yiddish girl down here in Egypt? And that ends up being Osnat. And that ends up being the woman that he marries. And that ends up being the woman that he has 2 children with, Ephraim and Manasseh. So actually everything is all still kept in the same family, which is amazing.
So they distantly related?
Yeah, they were. Dinah was Yosef's half sister, so this would have been his half niece, I guess. It's all just fascinating, the background to all of this, and we could go on for hours.
Absolutely.
We could go on for hours. Let's have a look
This
at
one
Pirkei.
particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look then, ladies and gentlemen, at our Mishnah for today. Where is it? Where are you? I think it's this page, but it's not this one. It's here. There we go. Can everyone see chapter 4?
We're on 4 now.
Yeah, and we're on Mishnah 2 over here. Can everyone see that? Will someone read that for us today?
It's not all showing. Is it the top one or the bottom? There are
The
two.
middle.
It's in the middle.
As I said, that one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But it's only half on. I can only see the first 3 lines.
Well, it's there, all in full.
What if I do that?
I move it. See if I can move it up. Okay. Oh yes, I've got it now.
Lovely. Don't all rush at once.
All right, I'll read. Then, as I said, be quick in performing a minor commandment, as in the case of a major one, and flee from transgression. For one commandment leads to another commandment, and transgression leads to another transgression. For the reward for performing a commandment is another commandment, and the reward for committing a transgression is a transgression.
Okay, so Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says, Heve ratz le mitzvah kala kebechamura, that we should run. It's not just be quick. Ratz in Hebrew means run. Run to do a mitzvah kala, a minor commandment, a light commandment. We can discuss exactly what we mean by these words, but run to do a minor commandment as you would to run to do a serious, a major commandment. And uvoreach min ha'aveira, and flee, run away as fast as you can from transgressing, from sinning, from making mistakes. Shemitzvah goreres mitzvah va'aveira goreres aveira, because one commandment will lead on to another commandment. The performance of mitzvot will cause you to do more mitzvot, and similarly, one aveira, one transgression, one mistake, one lapse, that can spiral on to doing other ones as well. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, uschar aveira aveira. The reward for doing a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Uschar aveira aveira, and the reward for doing an aveira is an aveira. And it's interesting. It says the reward for performing a commandment is another commandment, and the reward for committing a transgression is a transgression. So, I mean, it could be open up for interpretation. People might read it in different ways. Maybe the reward for a mitzvah is the fact that you got to do that mitzvah, and it's a reward in and of itself. Or maybe it's as it says on the screen, that the reward for a mitzvah is that you'll get to do another mitzvah. So all of that is open for us to reflect on, to think about, and to offer our own thoughts and our own comments. So who's going to start us off?
I think this one is not too difficult for me. Not too difficult.
In that case, Rita, you haven't understood it properly. No, I'm joking. Go on.
Looks too simple. Yeah, it looks quite simple. You stay in the right path. You do very, very well. You go the wrong path. You're not going to end up very well. End up in prison or end up, So I think just keep to the right path, and you get there, and that would lead to do you more mitzvahs as well.
Oh, very good.
I would say, if you had a choice of doing 2 commandments, the minor and the major, if you have to do them both quickly, how do you choose which one to do?
Oh, very good question. So how would you choose?
But how do we know which is that we understand that no mitzvah is more important than any other.
Oh.
This is getting a bit deep now.
We were doing so well.
It's always amazed me that one of the simplest and one of the most difficult mitzvot are joined together as the only 2 mitzvot where there's a reward in this world. I mean, hushing a mother away from the nest when you're stealing the eggs, it's impossible not to do that because the bird will fly away. Yet honouring your father and the mother, in some instances, when we were children, certainly it was one of the most difficult of mitzvot. yet they're both classified as the same.
Well, that's in terms of the reward. I mean, you're saying one is easy and one is hard, and yet they both reward long life.
Yeah. So how do we judge which is important, the most important?
It doesn't matter what is the most important.
How I mean, the only
No, but he's saying what I think Martin's saying is that. By the way, I just want to just quickly sidetrack for a second and welcome Willie onto the stream today. Hello, sir. Lovely to have you on board. Now, yes, back to the point at hand. So Martin, I think, was saying that how do you know which one is minor and which one is major? How can you determine such a thing if all mitzvot are important and all the rest of it? So
we understand there's no such thing as one mitzvah being more important than another.
Doesn't matter as long as you don't know if it's a small or a big, but as long as it's a mitzvah, it doesn't matter if it's big or small.
So why does the Mishnah say? Why does a rabbi of that stature say perform even a light mitzvah or even a minor command? What is a minor commandment? A commandment's a commandment. We're taught that there's no difference. You can't distinguish. We don't know the consequence of any commandment.
Well, you don't do it for the consequence. You do it for.
I know, but why does the Mishnah say perform a minor commandment? What is a minor commandment?
I understand it that way. If a minor comes in, just do it. It doesn't matter if your neighbor asks you, I don't know, to take his newspaper while you are out. You just take it. It's minor.
Well, why is that minor? You're helping somebody. It's less important than what?
It isn't important to say.
I suppose it's less important than taking a knife and digging it into him. But who are we to judge? If it was,
Well, we're not judging. You just have to do it. You be quick.
Yeah.
Whether it's
I just find it difficult to understand how a rabbi can say perform and might use that word.
minor.
very good. I mean, you guys have touched on some really amazing things over here. So that makes my job a little bit easier. Just to exacerbate the problem that Martin was just raising, this very rabbi, Ben Azai, whose name was actually Shimon Ben Azai, extremely phenomenal individual. He was a colleague of the rabbi in last week's Mishnah, Ben Zoma, and a colleague of Rabbi Akiva. And he said in the Gemara in Brachot, I can't remember the exact quote, but it goes something like this: Echad hamarbeh ve'echad hamamit uvilvad shelibo mechaven l'shem shamayim. Whether you're doing a lot or whether you're doing a little, as long as your heart is focused and concentrated for doing these things for Hashem. So it is interesting then that he also has a quote where he talks about minor mitzvahs and major mitzvahs and things which are bigger than other things, because it would seem that in his world, it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as it's all l'shem shamayim.
It's difficult for me to hear.
Oi, oi, oi. I'll try and speak up a bit.
Put your sound up, Nova.
I've got it up, but it's the iPad. I'm trying, hunched over it, trying to hear, but I find it very hard to hear what people are saying.
Would it help to hold the iPad a little closer?
I can't get any closer to it than I am now.
No, but you could hold it
On top
so
of
that
the
you can sit.
iPad.
You could sit back and relax and hold it. No.
Is it adjusted to the most the loudest sound? I've got it very high. I've got both hearing aids in, and it really upsets me because I can't hear what everybody's saying.
Well, I'll try and continue to talk loudly, and hopefully everyone else will as well.
Slowly as well.
Oh, no, I can only try.
Yeah, look at this.
I can only try. Okay, so we talked about a mitzvah kala, a minor commandment, and a chamura, a major commandment. So we need to try and understand a little bit about that as well. So I can't remember who it is that says this, but minor mitzvot you could kind of break down into 4 categories. You've got a mitzvah where it requires very little physical exertion. Okay, that could be classified as a minor mitzvah. Minor in the sense that it doesn't take very much out of you to be able to do it. To be able to take a penny and drop it into a tzedakah box, that's not quite the same as lifting someone's couch from one end of their house to the other. You know, whatever a mitzvah it might be that might require a lot of physical exertion. It's a minor mitzvah could be something that doesn't require very much of you at all. So in those kinds of instances, Ben Azai is saying, be as excited and passionate and zealous and full of alacrity to perform even a minor mitzvah, something that really doesn't take very much out of you at all. Be as excited to do that as you would be to do something that is requiring far more exertion on your part. A second possibility is a minor mitzvah, a light mitzvah might be something that you do very habitually. You do it barely without even realizing that you're doing it. You do it with routine and with such frequency that you're just used to it. It's part of your day. So in those things as well, we have to try and have that sense of mindfulness, that sense of awareness to run and do those things as well. It could be something like prayer, where we're just so used to rattling off the words that it's a very big exertion on our part to get ourselves mentally into that space that we are doing a mitzvah that we should take seriously. That's the second one. The third possibility is that it's a very logical mitzvah, and so sometimes we underestimate the importance of a logical mitzvah, something that I would just do anyway, not because it's a habit, but just because it just makes sense. What's the alternative? What else are you going to do? You know, being respectful and honoring your parents, well, of course, that's logical. Being honest in business, well, of course, that's logical. So the point is that we have to run to these and treat them as significant mitzvot, as much as we do with the things that might not be so comprehensible, might not be so easy to understand. And then the fourth potential category of a minor mitzvah is something that you actually really enjoy doing. Sitting down and having a Shabbos meal, I would do that whatever, because food is yummy, and I like challah, and I like Kiddush wine. I don't like power number 10. I don't know who does. But you know, when it's enjoyable, it's not such a big ask. You want to do it and you want to be there. So in those instances as well, we have to run to do those and focus our attention on the mitzvot that lie within those experiences, even when they are enjoyable, and even when I'm more than happy to sit down at a Shabbos meal. I'm more than happy to eat a donut on Hanukkah. Oh, believe me, I'm more than happy to eat a donut on Hanukkah. Yeah. So things that require very little physical exertion, things that have become routine and habit, things which we do because logic would dictate it anyway, and things that we do because we enjoy them. So they can all become minor mitzvahs. We can all start to become so familiar with them or underestimate them to such an extent that we think they're not significant. They're just minor mitzvahs. So actually, Ben Azai, number 1, is trying to tell us that we have to realize that every single mitzvah is significant. Every single mitzvah is important. Even if it comes easily to us, even if it comes naturally to us, they are amazing ways to be connecting to our Creator. but we have to run to them as well, which is hard in the opposite direction, because when something is so habitual and so routine, then it's very easy to lose that sense of clarity and to lose that sense of mindfulness, because these things become so easy for us and so minor. And so there's a challenge as well, that even with the things that we do, and we all do a lot, you know, but even with the things that we do, where we're so used to it, there's a challenge there as well of trying to re-infuse a bit of energy and a bit of passion and a bit of meaning into things which otherwise might just be a bit routine and a bit samey and a bit stale. We're supposed to try and have a sense of physical and spiritual satisfaction from the things that we do. You know, if Shabbos meals are just kind of getting to be a bit of a drag, you know, none of us would ever stop ourselves from sitting at a Shabbos meal, from making a kiddush on Friday night, from eating challah on Friday. You know, those things aren't going anywhere. We're going to carry on doing them. But if we're not running to them with the same zeal and with the same energy, then there's a separate challenge here as well, which is to run to these things and to invest ourselves into these things, so that actually they become a bit more meaningful, for us, and a bit more enjoyable, and a bit more, we're able to put more passion and effort into these things. So that, I would say, is the first part of the Mishnah. I wonder if people have anything that they want to say before I take us forward.
What do you do if you've got a choice of two mitzvahs? You've got the minor one and the major one. You can't do both.
So that is a good question. That does come up in different areas of Jewish law, and in fact, there are some mitzvahs which require our direct attention. If they're, for example, if you have got a responsibility to attending to the burial of a dead person, then that is going to supersede any other mitzvah that might come your way. To the point that you might not even need to daven in the morning. You might not even need to wear tefillin in the morning, because you are otherwise engrossed in organizing a burial. In fact, when a person, God forbid, loses a loved one, and they are otherwise involved with organizing the burial, there's a halachic status called an oneh, which is the status given to someone that actually precludes them from doing any other mitzvah while they are otherwise involved with organizing the burial of their loved one. So there are elements of this in Jewish law which do play out in a practical way, and that's.
I've always wondered about that, Bob. Is it forbidden? I mean, in this day and age, we hand over the technicalities of burial to the burial society. We're no longer running around here, there, everywhere. We may have to go and get the death certificate, but is it forbidden for an owner to put on tefillin?
There are limits.
Can he put on tefillin and daven if he knows he hasn't got anything else to do? He's performed all the necessary requirements of getting the green form and getting it signed and everything else.
So I believe that in an ordinary case, I believe the rules do apply. In exceptional cases where, for example, maybe they've got the body is having to be transported from some distant place, then I'm not sure what the halacha is, because if it could take a couple of days or whatever it is before the burial is taking place, I'm not sure exactly how that status plays out. I'm not great on all of these halachas without looking them up first, but the status does still apply in some way, yeah.
Right. I didn't know whether it was like you. I didn't. When my both my parents died. I didn't go to shul that morning.
Yeah.
While we were waiting for the funeral. But I wondered whether it was actually not allowed or whether it was discretional.
No, I don't believe it is.
Yeah, well,
I don't believe it is discretional. But that being said, in a situation where you're really not having to do anything, I don't know what the halakha would be. I'd have to double check that. Okay. So that's our running. Oh, Rita, you got your hand up?
Oh, that's for the second bit. For one commandment leads to another commandment.
Oh, very good. So we're getting
It
there.
doesn't say minor commandment or a bigger commandment. It doesn't say that. It said for one commandment, which means for one mitzvah would lead to another mitzvah. It doesn't tell you which, the big one or small one. It doesn't tell you.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So let's have a look at some of that. So we're saying at the beginning, we have to treat our light mitzvahs as we would our heavy mitzvahs. And as we pointed out, these mitzvahs are equal. Yes, there might be practical implications when you've got a choice of 2 mitzvot to do. Oh, but by the way, going back to Peter's question of what if you've got a choice of 2? So it won't really. It could be that we're saying it doesn't really matter which one you're doing, because the point is that whether it's a light mitzvah or a heavy mitzvah, whether it's one that carries with it a lot of prestige or one that's just kind of very much under the radar, they're still mitzvot nonetheless. So whichever one you choose, you're going to be choosing the right one, really, aren't you?
Well, sure. I mean, saving life is a mitzvah above all. You have to do that. You can break Shabbos.
But if you have a choice between if you have a choice, I mean, what kind of things do you have as an example? Do you mean if I've got 10 quid in my pocket and I've got 2 homeless people on the street, is it better for me to... Well, what kind of examples are you thinking of, Peter?
You can have a choice of, say, davening or going and helping a neighbour who serious needs your help. That would be a choice to have to make.
So very good.
It's just become lifetime. The mitzvah is to daven now because that's the most precious time. And yet my neighbour rings and says, I need help.
What you were saying before, there is a bit of a hierarchy of mitzvahs.
Yes.
It's like which ones take precedence.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there you do. Maybe we need to do a topic on that. It's a good opportunity to actually do that as a topic. It's not really necessarily going to be something that I can do on one leg now that I think about it properly. It's
in those circumstances, I would go and help the neighbour if they've fallen, because I can.
Oh well, if they've fallen, that's it. That's different. But what if they just need you to bring their newspaper in, or they need you to?
Well, then you daven and say, "I'll bring it in later."
Yeah. Fix their kitchen cabinet, whatever it might be. If it's not a time critical or a health critical issue, then yeah, praying first would be the hierarchical priority. We know as well that when we have different foods in front of us, there's a hierarchy for making a blessing. If you've got a biscuit, or pasta, or something that's made out of grain products, you would make that bracha before making a bracha on vegetables or fruit, or fish or meat or whatever it is. So yeah, there are concepts of hierarchies within these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. Well, I could ask. Does that mean, therefore, that we are trying to say that one is more important than another? Or just that one is, I don't know what word you would use. Does it mean it's more important? Or is it just that there's a hierarchy of I don't know what word I'd use if it wasn't importance, but...
But then I'm going to the next bit, like I just said before.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep hold. I'm holding you back, Rita, aren't I? I'm just not moving on.
No, the next one doesn't mention of the difference between a small one and a big one.
Yeah, so I think that's because when we realise that actually all of the things that we're doing are important, then we can understand that the way our actions work is that they have a domino effect, they have a spiraling effect. Yeah, so whatever mitzvah that we're doing, it's going to create a positive momentum, right? Mitzvah goreres mitzvah. One mitzvah is going to lead into another one, which is going to lead into another one. It's going to create a domino effect of just constantly always trying to do more and more and more and more. But that works the other way as well. When we start to become habituated to negativity and to doing the wrong thing, that can also spiral out of control as well. There's a phrase in the Talmud which is when you do an Aveira twice, when you sin twice, it becomes permitted. And the Talmud asks, the Gemara asks, sorry, what do you mean? When you do a sin, it becomes permitted. If I eat pork, it's now permitted in the Torah to eat pork. No, that's not what it means. It means that the more that you do something, in your mind, it becomes more and more acceptable. It spirals. It has a domino effect. So something that you might never ever dream of ever doing, if you start to do that thing and you do it again and you do it again after that, then before you know it, it's already part of your routine. It's already part of your habit. It's already acceptable to you. It's already ingrained in your psyche. Whatever words you want to use, it's this concept of Aveira goreres Aveira, that it starts to spiral on and on and on. But with mitzvahs as well, we start to do good things. We start to do nice things. It becomes a habit for us. It becomes a routine, and before you know it, we're doing amazing things for ourselves and for Hashem and for other people. So it's a bit like when you go to the gym. You know, you start off with light weights, right? As you start to build your muscle mass, and then as you get into the swing of things, and as the time goes on, then you're adding more and more weight to the machine or to the dumbbell, whatever it might be, because you're now able to persevere and you're able to lift more and you're able to push yourself harder. So that's how mitzvahs work as well, that we start with what we might call light mitzvahs. We start with things that we can do because they're easy, because we enjoy them, whatever it is. But that will then have a knock-on effect and a domino effect to us doing more and more mitzvahs and more things and pushing ourselves harder and doing more things for other people. So that is where the mission is going. And it's a shame that Rita's just gone out of the room there because we just answered her question of what all that's meaning. But that's the crux of it, which is that I can't think what the phrase is. Isn't there a phrase for this? Something like habit breeds habit or something like that? I don't know what I'm trying to think of. Pardon me?
I think there's one breeds contempt. There's one that says contempt breeds contempt.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay, well maybe that's the equivalent of Aveira goreret Aveira, that it spirals on in a bad way. You know, there's another phrase in the Talmud as well, which is B'derech sha'adam rotze leilech, Hashem molichin oto. The way that a person wants to go, Hashem will open those doors for you to do it. So if you want to go in a positive trajectory, in an elevated trajectory, then Hashem is going to create situations where you're able to capitalize on that, where you're able to take advantage on that. And if a person wants to, God forbid, go in the other direction, then God will open the doors as well for you to be able to have opportunities like that. If that's what you want, you know, then that's what you can have. So that's the crux of that next part of the Mishnah, that it's a spiral or a domino effect, that the more that we do in either direction, it will propel on to other areas as well. And then finally, we have this, I think it's rather cryptic. I kind of struggle to really explain this one well. Schar mitzvah mitzvah, schar aveira aveira. The merit, the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the reward for a transgression is a transgression. And I've not got a tremendous amount that I can really impart on these words. Whether it means that the reward for a mitzvah is actually that we then get to do another mitzvah, and perhaps if we don't appreciate that, then it's maybe just because we don't really think in these ways, that actually the mitzvot that we're doing are amazing in and of themselves, and to be able to do more of them is enough of a reason to do more of them, because it's a mitzvah and because it's important and because so actually I find it hard to articulate beyond just the words themselves, that the reward of a mitzvah is the ability to do another mitzvah, because each mitzvah is a priceless gem. Or does it mean that the reward of the mitzvah that you did is the mitzvah that you did? Yeah, because everything is so priceless and everything is so important, and so the fact that we did it is a reward in and of itself, and we shouldn't need other external rewards, or so be interesting to see if people have anything to say. And the sechar of an aveira is an aveira. Perhaps this means that when you get tempted by something which we're not supposed to indulge in, it's very short-lived, and we think, if I succumb to this temptation, if I succumb to this desire, if I give in to this whim, then it's going to give me prolonged happiness. And actually what we find is there's a very limited window of enjoyment. Yeah, you indulge for a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, whatever it might be, and actually what you're left with afterwards is not a very good feeling inside of you, which may then lead to people repeating the process again. But the reward, as it were, that maybe it's the window of enjoyment. I don't know if that's how we could interpret the sechar, the reward, but the window of enjoyment when you are doing this transgression, when you are making this mistake, maybe we're saying the window of enjoyment is limited to the time of the deed. I'm not too sure. Be interesting to hear.
It seems a funny word to use, but they haven't used the word the consequence. Would be a better word. But the translation is a payment, isn't it? A reward, yeah. The consequence of committing one sin is another sin, I suppose.
Yeah, except for the fact that our lovely translation on the screen doesn't call it another transgression. It called it another mitzvah, but it doesn't say another transgression. So,
let me just go back to the first sentence when it says.
What? Chapter 1, Mishnah 1?
You want to do it all again?
Yeah.
Be quick in performing a minor commandment, as in the case of a major one, and flee from transgression. Now, when it says transgression, does it mean that you have to be quick in performing a minor commandment and a major one? Is a transgression not being quick enough, or is it something completely different?
Interesting. I mean, the way perhaps that I was looking at it is that in the same way that we run to a mitzvah, we have to run away from an aveira, and perhaps we need to have a certain degree of alacrity and urgency to run away from doing the wrong thing, as we do when we are running to do the right thing. I think that's probably how I've been looking at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it's all a bit. It's all a bit up in the end.
It was easy at the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's so easy.
The translation I have is and flee from sin.
Yeah.
Flee from transgression. In other words, do a mitzvah, run away from not performing the mitzvah or from doing something bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's quite straightforward.
Mine is different. Flee from sin For
Yeah.
mitzvah to mitzvah and sin to sin.
Yeah, well, it's a translation of the word sin. They
Yeah.
use transgression.
Yeah.
Most books use sin.
You know, I think the point is, as we've been saying all along, that we have to realize the importance and the significance of our good deeds, our mitzvot, and we have to realize the significance of our bad deeds as well. So we have to seize the opportunity to do mitzvot, be they easy, be they difficult, and we have to run as fast as we can away from making mistakes and from doing the wrong thing and indulging in things that we shouldn't indulge in. Why? And then the Mishnah goes on to explain, well, because it's going to spiral into each other. If you do lots of good deeds, it's going to propel to more good deeds. And if you do the wrong thing, then that can end up propelling, and that can end up spiraling into areas and into places that we shouldn't want to go and don't need to be and don't want to go. So we have to be careful in that way as well.
You know, I remember during...
One second, Martin.
I was
Rita.
very young.
One second, Martin.
During-
Martin.
Yeah?
Rita was just saying something. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, it's fine. Martin, carry on.
I remember during the war, the chief rabbi at the time, Rabbi Brody, said that we must turn off the gas cookers even on Shabbat. And it was because it was so dangerous to leave it on because of the bombing and that sort of thing. And because there was no way of, we didn't have the facility that we have today of turning off the electric with remote, not remote, but time
switches. Yeah.
And when the war ended, and it was no longer a question of life and death, because there was gas in those days, it wasn't electric. They were gas burners to cook on Shabbos. And it was very difficult. It was a question, either you turned them off before Shabbos came in, or you left them on. And in the winter, that was so difficult because Shabbos came in at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and you didn't eat dinner till 7 o'clock. But after the war, people were so used to turning the gas off, it became very difficult to revert.
Mm.
And with all, if you're quite right. If you do something wrong a few times and there's been no consequence, you feel it's okay to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do another example, just came to my head, was these young children who start selling drugs at a very young age. And they get involved in gangs. Then the gangs start killing some of the other gangs. So one thing leads to something else, which I was just thinking about while you were talking about, gangs and drugs. And one thing leads to another, which is so true.
Mm.
This is just an example that I was thinking as we were talking.
I think it all makes reasonable sense now until you get, I think you mentioned it before, that last sentence, the reward for committing a transgression is a transgression. It doesn't quite, is reward the right word? Or
That's a good question as well. Let me see if I can find any better insights. By the way, while I do, there was something else, a story that I came across when the yeshiva in Lublin was, they were having the groundbreaking ceremony for the yeshiva in Lublin. And the building, I believe, was paid for by a very generous donor called Reb Shmuel Eichenbaum. And at the groundbreaking ceremony, the rabbi who was asked to speak said he's not envious of Rav Shmuel Eichenbaum for the mitzvah of donating the site, but he's envious of all of the other private mitzvahs, all the things that we don't know about, that were the catalyst for this big gesture of donating the money towards building this building. And I think the point that he was making is echoing on the words of this Mishnah, which is that You don't go from nothing to donating a building overnight. It's the incremental other good deeds and other mitzvot that you do along the way that lead you up until that point. And that will be the same with a lot of things that we do. We don't go overnight from being whoever we were to being the amazing people that we are now. We get to be the amazing people that we are now because of a lifetime of trying to do the right thing and trying to be a good person and trying to be helpful and try and bring our positivity and our light and our help to the world. It's a gradual process. It's not, an immediate leap. So that's something else that came to my mind. Okay, schar mitzvah, schar avera. Okay, so one of the main ways that this is interpreted is that when you do a mitzvah, God will give you the opportunity to do another mitzvah. So the reward, as it were, of doing one is that you will have an opportunity to do another one. And the reward, the consequence, whatever you want to call it, of doing an Aveira is that God will open that door for you to do another Aveira, and you'll be presented with more opportunities to follow that path. So that seems to be the primary way that it gets interpreted.
Right path, that's it. That's what I said in the beginning. It sounded so easy. Stay in the right way. Right.
You were right, Rita. All we've been doing is just trying to enhance our understanding. You're absolutely right. Very easy.
I find that last explanation very tough, very difficult to understand. You would think the opposite. You would think that if you do something wrong, God would be on your side, trying to convince you to do it right, not to open the doors to do another wrong thing.
Well, maybe that depends on a person's mindset.
Yeah.
If a person has regret and doesn't want to have to be presented with it again, that's not the same as someone who is just throwing in the towel and doesn't want to feel like it's a conflict for them anymore. If a person is choosing to veer away, then God will open that door. If a person is inadvertently or accidentally or in a moment of impulse making a mistake, then Hashem will still present the opportunities for people to claw it back. I don't think it means that once you make one mistake, that's it. There's no point anymore. It's a point of when a person is consciously choosing to do the same mistake, but eventually it will just spiral, and you'll just have that opportunity there, and it'll be very difficult to come back out. But if a person wants to, that's what it is. That's what we said at the beginning. Ben Azai himself said, whether you're doing a lot, whether you're doing a little bit, as long as your intentions are because you want to do the right thing. So even when you make mistakes, if your intentions are to do the right thing, then those doors are still open for us. But there are people who don't want those doors to be open anymore. So yeah. All right, guys, we're going to stop the recording there. That's all we've got time for our recording. But do come and join us for the after party on Zoom. But until then, we wish you a Shabbat Shalom, a happy Hanukkah. Have a wonderful and meaningful day. Take care.